Good morning, everyone, especially to you, Mom. By the way, I am Melanie Ibo Cabaluna, third year student from the College of Forestry and Environmental Science. Anyway, I am recording this report to discuss to us about pop art. So, what is pop art? Pop art is an art style that returns to the material realities of everyday life to popular culture. This is where the pop term comes from, which derives from most of the visual pleasures of people like television, magazines, food, or comics. So, pop art is a 20th century art movement that utilized the imagery, style, and techniques of consumerist society and popular culture. Favored media derive figural imagery and the mass reproduction of everyday objects. The term pop eventually came to encompass the fields of music, consumer design, and fashion too, and corresponded to an entire way of life among young people in the 1960s. Pop art developed as a reaction against abstract expressionism, which preceded pop, that was considered by the pop artists as pretentious and over-intense. So, distinguishing pop art from other styles that use found objects. A found object is an object that an artist uses in his art which already exists. Found objects are placed in a conventional setting with a context that is appropriate to the found object. Also, the objects in this painting, though brightly colored, still look artificial and do not have a life of their own. The installation by Marcel Duchamp is an inverted urinal that, according to him, it becomes a fountain. This piece of art has absolutely no context, and the found object is perceived to be something totally different from its real nature and purpose. These found objects are stripped of all superfluous ornamentation and are now, according to the artist, pure in form. They are still placed within a context, example in a room. The found object has no context. It is isolated and placed for the viewer to admire. Not focusing on the setting, the artist has repeated the American flag trails in its original form because a pop artist admires and glorifies a found object in its originality. Characteristic of pop paintings and sculpture. According to Gritchenberg, pop artists did images that anybody walking down the street could recognize in a split second, all the great modern things that the abstract expressionists tried so hard not to notice at all. Pop artists use common images from everyday culture as their sources, including advertisements and consumer goods, celebrities and photographs, and lastly is comic strips. Pop artists reflected 60s culture by using new and different materials in their artworks, including acrylic paints, plastics, photographs, fluorescents, and metallic colors, silkscreen ink, canvas, and rubber for sculpture, and vinyl. Pop artists also use new technologies and methods, including mass production, fabrication, photography, printing, serials, stenciling, collage, and silkscreen. Pop art in America. In the US, pop art made an attempt to bring art back into American daily life. It was linked to the wealth and prosperity of the post-World War II era, and artists of the movement responded to the nation's consumerist society. American pop artists used images from popular culture directly in their art. It was anonymous and aggressive. Pop art in Britain. Pop art began in London in the mid-1950s, but from the very start, its imagery was largely based on American mass media. It was the product of the resistance to modernist art, design, and architecture. British pop artists had an optimistic point of view. They preferably dealt with various forms of direct action, assemblage, and happening rather than comics or advertisement. Richard Hamilton is the father of pop art, and he was the one of the founders of British pop movement in 1955. According to him, pop art was art that was popular, designed for a mass audience, transient or short-term solution. Pop art in Japan. It is unique and identifiable as Japanese because of the regular subject and styles. Takashi Murakami, whose group of artists Kaikai Kiki is world-renowned for their own mass-produced but highly abstract and unique super flat art movement whose inspiration comes mainly from anime and Japanese street culture, is mostly aimed at youth in Japan and has made a large cultural impact. Many pop artists in Japan use surreal or absence, shocking images in their art, taken from Japanese hentai. This element of the art catches the eye of viewers young and old, and is extremely thought-provoking but is not taken as offensive in Japan. Pop art in Spain. Eduardo Eduardo Arroyo was considered to be a pop artist. On account of his interest in the environment, he is critic of our media culture, by which he incorporates icons of both mass media communication and the history of painting in his art, and his scorn for nearly all established artistic styles. However, Alfredo Alcane could be considered the most authentically pop artist in Spain because of the use he makes of popular images and empty spaces in his composition. Pop art in Italy. Italian pop art takes the same ideological path as that of the international scene. The only thing that changes is the iconography and in some cases, the presence of a more critical attitude to it. Mimo Rotella's torn posters gain an ever more figurative taste, often explicitly and deliberately referring to the great icons at the times. The who's who of pop art. Andrew Warhol, or popularly known as Andy Warhol, was the central figure of the American pop art movement. He became famous worldwide for his avant-garde pop paintings and screen painting. Andy Warhol used photographic silkscreening, a method of mass production to create his paintings of assembly line objects and celebrities whom he thought were themselves was produced. Warhol appropriate use without permission images of objects from magazines, newspapers, and also from Press Protus, the most popular people of his time to create his silkscreen masterpieces. He also took screen tests of models and used their photographs for his paintings. Warhol had a very special interest in movie stars and was obsessed with Hollywood fame and glamour. This passion of his was represented in his art in 1962 when he started creating portraits of Marilyn Monroe. Roy Lichtenstein. Like Andy Warhol, Lichtenstein started by working in the commercial graphic business for a while, making designs and decorating shop windows and advertising for local grocery stores. He also worked as an art professor at a few universities. His first photo paintings was the $10 bill in 1956. Roy Lichtenstein's first painting in the style of a comic strip was a painting of Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck which he copied from a book, changing just a few details. It was the paintings of Roy Lichtenstein. Lichtenstein adopted a commercial art style showing everyday objects in a comic book style by using bold and bright colors, prominent black outlines, balloons or speech or thought or music, and patterns of dots to create distinctive popular works. Unlike the abstract expressionists, Lichtenstein liked mimicking familiar images in popular culture. Lichtenstein's painting process would start with selecting a character from one of the various comics available. These were mostly born anonymous beautiful women, often unhappily bothered by men. Claes Oldenburg. As a pop artist, Claes Oldenburg celebrates the everyday object with a keen sense of humor. Claes Oldenburg takes a banal object and transforms it into a sculptural form by representing it using radically different materials and scale. However, unlike Warhol, who would retain and even plant the manufactured identity of an object, Oldenburg transformed it through a process of visual free association. He was more attracted to the generic rather than the branded. Glaze Oldenburg is also an extraordinary draftsman and frequently transformed his ideas for monumental outdoor sculptures and landscapes reorientation into drawing and prints that are fanciful yet pointed proposal for civic monuments. Soft sculptures. In the late 60s, Claes Oldenburg started to construct his soft sculpture. He would take something hard-edged and geometric and make it into something pliable and organic or vice versa. A summary of pop art. Pop art reflected the times it was made in, found art in commonplace everyday objects, soap cans, hot dogs, cars, and so on, and reflected the dynamic world of the media, film, advertising, and comic books. In short, it is all the things we see in our day-to-day lives, just through different lenses, humorous lenses, sarcastic lenses, even pointless lenses that can only validate themselves. That's all. Thank you and God bless.